When it comes to violent crime, there are 5 steps to the sequence. This video focuses on the first 3 with particular attention paid to how women can successfully manage the violent assault sequence. I'm going to talk about habits and levels of awareness to help you avoid being a victim of a violent crime. So stay tuned. I'll get right into it right after the channel intro. So as it relates to civilians like you and I, let me talk a little bit about the basics of violence. First of all, it's not, in a lot of cases, what you think it is. It's certainly not what you've been shown on entertainment in general. Violence is what it is. You and I, we don't get to choose when violence will happen to us, whether or not it will happen to us, and in what form it will happen to us. We don't have that choice. So what that really means is we are a constant potential victim from the time we're born until the time we take a dirt nap. People who have bad intent, people who intend to use violence to get what they want, they're different. Their mindset, they wake up and they are prepared to inflict violence on someone to further what their goals are. So, we don't get to choose. The bad guy always does. So, the imperative that has for us is we can never delegate to someone else our own safety. We are always responsible, first, for our own safety and our own protection. Second, just because our eyes see something that we haven't imagined as it relates to violence, that doesn't mean we should ignore it. That means we should be always paying attention. So let me talk a little bit about violence and women, although this particular message applies to violence to anyone. There are some unique things about violence and relationship to women that I think should be covered. First is, and it might seem like a blinding flash of the obvious for a lot of us and a lot of you, but women are not raised like men. Women are not raised to deal with violence like men. Women are raised to handle men using social rules, not physical rules. I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm just saying, in general, in our culture, that's how women tend to be raised. Those rules are a disadvantage to women because they do not apply in a violent attack. Now, when the fight or the violence taking place is between men and women, if a man feels that he is fighting a woman for dominance, his goal is to punish her. Most women feel that if they fight a man, he will escalate into a savage beatdown. The reason? For challenging his right to dominance and his manhood. Listen to me. That is true. Now, while men will want to engage in violence or engage in a violent attack many times to show dominance, women don't. And you men, pay attention. Once a woman has reached a point where she will use her own violence in a fight, her goal, rather than dominance, is to inflict the maximum amount of damage possible on whoever it is on the other side of that. Women do not do the monkey dance. Women try to kick your ass once that genie has been released from her. Women are not trained to show who's boss. Women are trained to inflict the maximum amount of damage once she has decided that she needs to do that. You guys, be afraid. So the message for women in the situation where there's a violent attack is, when it becomes necessary to fight, you, the woman, the female, you must have the mindset that when you unleash yourself, it is a total effort. You do not care about the outcome. You care about inflicting as much damage as possible. Winning is great, but the person who has started violence with you must know that you are in it for the fight. Now, for a man, when that violence is used against a man in defending yourself, you need to understand that there is no level of force that can be used against a man by a woman that would discourage him once he has decided that he's going to use violence on you for whatever the reason. Your goal in defending yourself must be total incapacitation of the male. Get that in your head. This is not a game of rules. If you have to unleash your violence in your protection, it must be total, and it must not be to, quote, make him go away, because he won't. It must be to put him down. And down means down, however you want to determine that. So let's talk about the sequence of a violent attack, a violent crime. There are 5 steps. The first step is the intent. And that is from the bad guy, from the person who's going to use violence on you, the intent. Right? So intent, they have intended to use violence against someone, maybe you. The second step is the interview. The interview means they are evaluating whether or not, in your case, they can get away with what it is they're trying to do. The third step involves their positioning themselves to be successful in the attack on you. Now, this video stops at the end of that, because what I'm trying to do is talk about the strategies to be used so that the violent attack does not happen. The next 2 steps have to do with the attack taking place. So the 4th step is the attack has now been launched. You are now in the violent stage. It could not be prevented. So now you are in a fight. You will either win that fight or you will not. But even if you are on the ground, the violent encounter is not over until the attacker has left the scene. And that assumes that you have lost. It is not over, which means your fight is not over until they are gone. And we'll talk some more about that. So when we talk about a violent attack now, a violent situation, one of the things that you need to really keep in mind is there are 4 things that are true. A violent attack will be closer than you think. It will happen faster than you think. It will happen with more surprise to you than you think. And it will be with great power, much more power. So before we get into those 3 areas of intent, interview, and positioning, those are the things that you can have countermeasures for before a violent attack actually happens. I want to talk about this notion of having habits that you develop that help you prevent becoming the victim. And I'll talk about it later, but it helps you fail that interview. In my opinion, the single most important habit that you can have, especially when you're out and about, is the habit of monitoring your situational awareness. Okay, what does that really mean to us civilians? It means scanning your surroundings. Scanning your surroundings. Did I say scanning? And there's a reason for that. And I'll explain. It has to do with these 2 things here and how we as humans are different from other creatures that also have these things. Okay, so if you take a look at the diagram, there are basically 2 types of eye patterns among mammals on land. One belongs to predators, and we're predators, and the other belongs to food. Food are the animals that have eyes on the side of their head. Cows, things like that. Deer, elk, We and wolves and predators have eyes in front. The difference is the ones with the eyes on the side, they have binocular vision. They get to see, without moving their heads, a whole lot of stuff. Which is why racehorses, for example, have blinders on. To give them what we have, monocular vision. Our vision is designed for straight ahead looking. And when we want to really see something, we have to turn our heads. That's just the way our eyes are made. Prey, food, they can just stand there and they get to see stuff. Right? So what we have to do is scan. We have to move our heads in a certain way because we don't have binocular vision. So we have to move our eyes so that what we're looking for comes into our vision. And since we're not owls, we can't turn our head all the way around behind us. What does that mean? That means you turn your head, and it has to be slowly, because our eyes don't respond to really fast movement of the head. So you have to scan this way so that you can end up seeing behind you. That's called scanning. And when you do that, you take in a lot more information about your situational awareness. 99% of the people that I see walking down the street or even driving in their car are focused straight ahead. They rarely look. Some don't even look before they change lanes. You know what I'm saying? So the single most important habit that you can have is to scan, which means turn your head slowly and look, because it takes time for your eyes to look at motion. And carry your firearm is the second one. I had to throw that in there. So our eyes don't process information quickly. We, because we're hunters, we're looking for prey, our eyes look for motion first. We look for motion, then the next thing is shape, the next thing is color, and then if we really focus, then it's differentiation. Do we actually recognize what that thing is? Do we recognize who it is? That's why a person can just merely by changing a hat can disappear in a crowd, or changing the color of their hair. Because once you change those kind of things, our eyes don't process that well. That's why if you wear a ghillie suit and you move really, really slowly, it's almost impossible for us to see them, because we don't know where to look and where to focus. And when we're focusing on that one thing, we totally lose everything else out here, which is why we have to scan. And if you really want to see a kick-ass example of that, go to, this is a shout out from my buddy, the Immortal, and he has this video called Silent. You have to check it out, and you will absolutely understand the importance of our vision and scanning. I just had to put that out. Once you've developed the habit of scanning, now let's talk about some other places that you might be. The first would be your home. What are some of the habits? These are habits now that I'm suggesting that you do. The first, you are under no obligation to answer your door. You are under, I'll say it again, you are under no obligation to answer your door for anyone. And if you don't have a peephole, get one. Better if you can have a remote camera outside so you can see who's at your door. That's better. I know it costs money. But understand, you are under no obligation to answer your door. If you choose to answer your door, always verify who it is. Always. And once you verify, you still are under no obligation to answer the door, even if it's a cop. Unless the cop says, I'm XYZ police and I have a search warrant, then you have to let them in. If they say, I'm XYZ police, can you let us in? Do you have a warrant? No. I will when you get one. We can talk through the door. When you talk about your perimeter, lock your windows and don't have them so somebody can just open them up. Right? Have lights, please. Right? And make sure you have the means for accessing and calling for help. Whether it's a cell phone, landline, I don't care. Have a means for requesting help. Now, your car, your vehicle. You've seen lots and lots of videos of what can happen to people around their car. Usually they're getting jacked, robbed, shot, killed, whatever. Now, you need to be doing what? Paying attention, scanning, looking around when you're approaching your car. It's not over when you put the key in and you're entering your car. You should be looking around. You should be pausing and taking a look. When you're starting your car, are your doors locked? If not, why not? When you're driving, do you pull up so close to somebody that if you get hit from the rear, you're going to rear end them? If you pull up on somebody, you should be able to see the two rear tires. Why? Because that guarantees that you can get out, you can turn and get out of the way at rapid speed if you need to. It also means if you get hit from the rear, you're probably not going to hit the person in front of you. When you're coming to a stop, who is around the stopped area? What cars, what people, what activity? If you're getting out of your car, have you taken the time to look to see what is happening before you unlock your door? These are habits. These are just habits. I do it every day, every time. And at first it felt weird, trust me. But once you start doing it, it's pretty good. Most vulnerable, especially women, when you're loading and unloading your car when you're done shopping or you've come out of the store. You're very vulnerable then. I know you have to get stuff out of your car. You have to put, some stores will escort you to your car, but that doesn't mean that when you're at home, you're going to have an escort. So if you have a garage and your garage is secure, don't stop outside. Go inside the garage, secure the door, then take your stuff into the house. You have no idea how many times I see people just doing that from outside, from the driveway. When you're refueling, you're pumping gas. Do you have any idea of who else is around you? Pay attention. Pay attention. If there's a big column somewhere, put your back to it so somebody can't come up behind you. Pay attention. So now let's talk about the three phases of a violent encounter, a violent attack. So let's talk about intent. That's the first one. You will almost never be able to determine that. The exception is if the violent attack has to do with a fight, and you can sense some physiological differences in the person. Their heart rate is up. They're flushed. They're starting to move into fight position. They're giving you physical cues that they're about to intend to unleash violence on you. The speech, what they tend to say, how close they're getting into your space while these physiological changes are happening are the only indicators. For a criminal, a violent criminal who has made the intent that they're going to go jack somebody, you cannot know that, which takes you to step number 2, and that's the interview. So the next step is the interview, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time on this area. Your job is to fail the interview. Why? Because the bad guy is asking themselves 2 questions. 1, I want to jack that car. Can I get away with it? And the second question is, if I try to jack the car, will I get hurt in the process? Those are 2 questions. If I do it, can I get away with it? And if I do it, am I going to get hurt bad enough that it would matter to me? Now, before I go further, I want to let you know my personal feelings about this particular area and the interview, because these tactics used by violent criminals are also used by panhandlers. And I carry every day, and my greatest fear is that I will mishear or misinterpret a cue and shoot someone that I didn't want to. So I think about that a lot. But let's get into the things that are an interview, because the panhandler wants to get your money. They don't want to steal your money. They want to intimidate you into giving it to them. The bad guy looks a lot like an approaching panhandler. But there's 3 types of approaches that they will make. The first is called the blitz. They are on you before you recognize it. You are caught by surprise. If that happens, that means you did not pay attention to your instincts. That's when you turn to put your groceries in the car, and the next thing you know, your face is being slammed into the side of your car. You're walking around a corner and you weren't paying attention, and you're jumped from the side, or inside an elevator, or anywhere else where you weren't paying attention, or you disregarded cues that you should have seen if you were doing what? Paying attention by scanning. So one of the things that you can do, and one of the key things that you should do, you need to look and act like if you are attacked by anyone, they will pay a price. They will pay a price. Now, some people cannot do that. If you are in a wheelchair, if you have to use a cane, if you are obviously in some physical impairment, you are an easy target. The only way you can protect yourself is if you have a firearm on you, and then if you're carrying concealed. Now, that's not going to let the guy know that he's in danger, but it will give you a chance to respond. But for most people, they can look, walk, and act in command of themselves. The next technique used is charm. The smile. Hey man, how's it going? How's your day going? As they're walking closer to you, closing the position. understand this law. It's called Walker's Law, my law, right? There are no charming people. There are only people who use charm. Charm is a tool. Charm is a tool to get close to you, right? If you're a woman and you're carrying a bag of groceries and somebody walks up to you smiling, can I give you a hand with that? Unless you have invited that, your answer is no. And by the way, in case you didn't understand this, no is a complete sentence. No requires no further explanation. Because the answer to no is going to be, well, why do you have to be that way? I'm trying to be nice. As they're closing on you, as they're changing their position, trying to use charm. The third tactic is called fishing. Fishing is where they're scoping out a crowd and they're trying to look for you or look for the person where they can ask the question, can I get away with it? And is it safe to attack that person? Now, this is another benefit of the habit of scanning, the habit of looking around. If you are paying attention, the bad guy is paying attention to you, paying attention, and you have failed the interview. Because he cannot waste his time on someone that he knows he's going to have to spend more energy to try to defeat your awareness. If you're paying attention, somebody's paying attention to you paying attention. Here's a story. I'm in the mall. I'm standing there. I'm waiting for somebody who's in the store, right? I didn't want to go in the store. So I'm standing in the hallway up against the wall, minding my own business, looking at people. Do you know how many times somebody comes up to me, especially if I'm in business clothes, somebody says, excuse me, sir, can you help me with, do you know where the... I'm sorry, I don't work here. Oh, I thought you were security. You know what I'm saying? So if you're paying attention, others are paying attention to you. And they're making the assumption that, I'll worry about somebody else. Now, the third area that I'm going to talk about is positioning. This is the bad guy positioning himself in preparation for the violent attack on you. There are 5 types of positioning strategies that they will use. The first is the basic, I'm going to close the distance on you, right? Never let someone close the distance on you. Think of a panhandler and you don't want to be bothered. If they're closing on you, you maintain the distance to force them to be obvious in closing on you. Because then the next thing you're going to say is that. Go away and don't bother me. And you're going to do that when they're far enough away that they get the message. Because anyone that continues to close on you does not have anything good in mind. The second strategy that they use is to entrap you or to corner you so you can't get away. Usually this takes more than one person, but sometimes they can do that by cornering you between an object or a wall or some other barrier, so you have to come past them or through them to get away. Surprise is just that. You didn't know they were there, and bang, they're on you. Because they were paying attention and you were not. The pincer movement requires more than one person, and that's where they're coming at you from different angles. Okay, you need to observe that, and as you're walking around, you need to always know, where can you escape to? Can I go down this street instead of that street? Can I reverse course and go back the other way? When you're out and about, you always need to know what your alternative paths are. If you're inside a building, where can I go? Where are the exits? So you don't get trapped, cornered, and put in a pincer move. And the worst one is you are now surrounded. That is really bad, and you're pretty much going to have to fight. So how do we avoid becoming positioned? Well, the first two, act like they're going to have to pay if somebody bothers you. But in general, avoid places where minds get altered, especially your own. Okay? Avoid places where young men gather in groups. Avoid places where territories are usually in dispute. Most of this stuff is, don't go where gangbangers are. Don't go where drug people are. Just don't go where the bad guys are. And you'll be okay, right? And last, which is more general, if it's a lonely, dark place, and you don't have to go into or through the lonely, dark place, don't go. Now I'm going to finish this series on this video with a little conversation about what I call the extended interview. The extended interview occurs when there is violence within a relationship. If you know the extended interview is in play when your gut tells you you are at risk. If you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells around your person, the partner in your life, that's a clue. If the person expects constant access to you, it's a demand. If there's inappropriate surveillance of you, the person shows up unexpected, they're photographing you, the person wants access to your passwords and access to your social media accounts. Let me say this. I don't care if you're male or female. Never, ever, ever give up a password or access to your computer files to anyone. No one has a right to do that. No one. No one has a right to take your phone and go and investigate your stuff. No one has a right to go into your purse and inspect. No one has a right to go into your pockets and look at what's in there. Unless you're being searched by a cop. You understand what I'm saying? You are under no obligation, I don't care how long you've been in a relationship, you're under no obligation to provide password protected access to your privacy. Nowhere, no how, and if that is a demand, pay attention. If the person doesn't accept no, if the person doesn't accept rejection, you told them, sorry, you're a nice person, don't call me again. And there's a continuous pressure. That is not cute. That is not charming. That is a person trying to use charm to get to you. That's a signal. Obviously, if there's verbal threats or intimidation, that's a big one. If a person in anger destroys things, punches holes in walls when they're mad, if they beat the dog, throw the cat. If they continually wave weapons, knives, firearms, whatever, just wave them around. If it's a firearm, it belongs in a holster unless it's being taken out to be cleaned, worked on, or used. They're not to be waved around. People that do that, pay attention. And if it's a guy, and the guy says, or acts like I can do this to you because I'm a guy. This is my right as a man. So if by now a lot of these things ring a bell and you don't have your own firearm to protect yourself, you need to be working on an escape plan. I'm just saying. So I hope this information has been helpful. I really would appreciate if you want to give me feedback, please do it in the comment section. This is an experiment for me. This is one of the longest, most instructional things that I've tried to do, and I would welcome your feedback on that. So as always, thanks for watching. Carry on.